Ellen, thank you so much for making time for us today. I Off the jump, like, what is your relationship with Texas, specifically this area of Texas?
I have no relationship at the moment, but now I guess I've just started to have a relationship with Round Top. It seems like quite a lovely, really quite a pretty little town, and it's little, and that's quite appealing considering everything is way too big and way too blown out, and this has quite a charm to it.
I was doing a bit of research on you, and I'm really interested in learning about. I read you're kind of on this fashion track with your career in the early stages, and I'm curious about when you pivoted into costume design and like what was the first film you worked on, and how'd that come to be?
Well, costume designers have this one thing in common that a lot of costume designers, most costume designers, happen upon costume design by accident.
Hmm.
Yes, when I left school, I started in the fashion business, and I did that for about 7 years and actually got bored and didn't really know what I was going to do.
Like bored in what sense? What do you mean?
I didn't want to do it anymore. I was
Mm,
bored. I didn't
mm,
really, it wasn't inspired. Wasn't something that I felt like I wanted to do in a different way. It was just the end of the line. And so what I wanted to do was find something new and didn't know that I was going to find something new. When I went to visit my husband at the time, who was doing a teeny, teeny little period pic, period contemporary picture in New Orleans. And I went to visit, and they didn't have a costume designer. And they said, Ellen, would you do the costumes? And I said, yes, of course. And not knowing what I was saying yes to, but it seemed so exciting. And not exciting because it was a movie.
mm-hmm.
I have to clarify that.
Sure.
It was exciting because it was another design experience for me. And I love art and I love design. So to apply it to another medium seemed like I was in a candy store.
Like a new world
A whole
opened.
new world opened. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did know how to make clothing. And so with that knowledge, I could hire a few people to be able to create the designs that I would make. And there was also a costume house in New York at the time named Brooks Van Horn, who I went to see, and somebody else made the deal, and we were able to pull tons and tons of costumes. And it was let me just remember, I think it was the turn of the century. So we were just very, very fortunate to get many things that we needed. And I finished the film. I had to be the person on the set and dress the actors, which I'm not good at all.
It's a very physical,
It's
kind of intimate
the
pro
intimacy doesn't bother me.
I see, I
It
see.
is the physical part of it. And I have very bad small motor skills. And I just can't get around that. And am not good at sewing, and I can't do the cutting, and I could design, but I can't do the technical parts. But I had to. And at the end of it, I went, this is something I want to pursue. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple of openings, to meet a couple of new people in that worked in wardrobe and costume design in New York at the time. And I was able to shadow them for a bit. And I was able to then very quickly do my own work. So I'm very fortunate. I'm very, very, very fortunate
In
that
terms of the trajectory you happen on,
yes,
right?
yes, because I guess it's something that I just was akin to. And whatever question I might have had just was answered in one way or another, or I figured out the answer. It was just so matter of fact and so easy. And I thought, okay, now I'm a costume designer. And I was wrong, because that didn't happen overnight. So I was a bit lost for a minute and a half to say, well, what do I do now? Where do I go? What do I do? How do I do it? What are the steps. And one of the steps at that time was becoming a member of a union. And that was necessary to be able to work.
And explain for me, I think I know, but what is the function of a union in film, specifically in the costume world? What does the union enable for you or do for you?
Well, the union, it's a bigger part of a bigger pie. Every department, every category works within the union. Now, you don't work for the union. They protect you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a salary that they protect. You have health and welfare benefits.
Mm-hmm.
You have benefits, or you're supposed to have benefits that they protect you
Mm-hmm.
for everything. Sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, the real world happens, right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any reflections on early films you may have seen where you really felt viscerally, wow, like the design of the costumes are doing work here to make me feel a certain way or flesh out the world? I'm just curious about, did you have these kind of cinematic touch points when you came into that first film, or?
No, I had them much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 8 years old, I think I was 8, I saw a film called Auntie Mame, which starred Rosalind Russell. It was made in 1958, and it was there are a number of different iterations of the same story. One was, I think, a play. Another movie was made. It might have been called Mame, but the one with Rosalind Russell, for some reason or other, I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
I saw it and I just was, oh my God, this is like my life. Or I made a jump at 8 years old to say, this needs to be my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the whole story, and it was it was a very glamorous story, and it was a very colorful story, and she was a hugely colorful character, and as were the characters around her. And I loved the story, and I loved the glamour of it, and it took place in New York, and it just affected me in a way that it just kind of just eased its way into my heart. And I didn't say that's what I want to be.
It's nonverbal, these nonverbal.
It was a nonverbal communication that
Mm-hmm.
then I suspect that in my young years, any film, because I did see a lot of films over the course of being young and teenage and so on, before making any decisions, I didn't think I would be a costume designer. I thought I was going to possibly go into fashion. But what I really wanted to do, and did at the same time as a young child, was paint. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be a painter, an artist, and clearly that's not a profession. And my mom at that time said, that's not a way to make a living, and begged my art teachers to try to convince me to pick something that I can
Sounds like a
make
loving
money.
parent that is looking out for you. Yeah, right.
And themselves.
Yeah.
So it was something that kind of, I loved many different things. I loved illustration. I loved graphic design. I loved all of it. And quite frankly, I think because of my love of painting and those illustration, etc., when I would watch a film, and I love storytelling, so when I'd watch a film, I could incorporate everything, unbeknownst to myself. Clearly, I was too young, but somehow or other, all of it registered. And even as a costume designer, much later on in life, and even after gaining some success, much later on in life, I thought to myself, I think I want to do more. This isn't really enough. And why I say that is simply because of what I was initially attracted to when I was a kid, and also the love of storytelling, and wanted to be a bit more in charge of the storytelling in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I got trapped in being a costume designer. I don't mean that to be a bad thing.
No,
I
yeah, I hear
became a
you.
costume designer and was very fortunate to meet a lot of very talented filmmakers.
So my next question, something that intrigues me about your body of work, which is so, I'm so fascinated by the number of genres you worked in and different directors, modes of production, right? However, I'm so interested in this question of, for example, when you're working on Wall Street, it's like when you're working on a film like that, are you anticipating, oh, this is going to be like a kind of cultural marker in a way in terms of like not the financial success of the film, but the sort of cultural success of the film and
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is a phenomenon to me when a film makes a cultural difference and makes a shift in culture that affect so many people. It has tapped into the zeitgeist, and you can't predict that. And there are so many filmmakers that really try to predict this, and it is an impossible task.
I love the story of like Casablanca, it was like a routine studio picture that just, things get reclaimed, 20, 30 years later all the time. But that film is interesting to me because of how, it's landmark, but it's like, I'm just curious. I think that's a kind of an obvious cultural landmark film, but I'm interested in your body of work. Is there another film that kind of had a similar rocket ship thing that you didn't anticipate?
Well, I never anticipate how it's going to be perceived. If I have been asked to do a project or accepted a project from that, what's most important to me is that I love the text. And the text is a script. And I really, really love the people that I'm working with and have full faith and confidence in the people that I'm working with and can have a good collaboration and good conversation. And I always really feel that there's one thing that I just really do want to say this because I think it's so important. Communication is the most important element of all jobs you do, of every single job you do. They do not teach it in school. You have to learn it on your feet. You have to learn it sometimes on your job. And if you are in between school and a profession, try to learn it even in school, because communication is the most important thing that you will experience throughout your life. And whether that is with your classmate, whether it's with the person you're directly working with, or the person that you have to, as far as costume design, an actor that you are going to work with and have to create costumes for, a director that has to understand what your point of view is, or you understand what his or her point of view is. It is the most important skill that you can have. And it beats the heck out of me why it is not even broached in school.
Right. It's like this kind of indirect skill that you're just
But it's
expected
not
to.
indirect.
It's like crucial to everything.
It's crucial to everything,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
indirect.
Yeah.
But for Wall Street, we never really anticipated a cultural shift, a cultural change. Prior to Wall Street, I did a film called Fatal Attraction.
Yes.
And Fatal Attraction actually shifted a cultural perspective as well about that, what that affair and what those type of women were at that moment in time. Then came Wall Street, and what Wall Street did culturally was change the face of men's fashion. And that was a shock. It was like, okay. The shock came one day. I was on another film, and I got a call from somebody at the LA Times, and they said, Ellen, were you aware that there are any number of 30-year-olds walking around Beverly Hills looking like Gordon Gekko? And what I found fascinating about that was Gordon Gekko was the villain.
Right.
And there was not one person that didn't want to look like the villain.
Right. Kind of like the Scarface phenomenon as well. You're right. Absolutely. You cannot. It's people see the films how they see the films, and they see themselves in it. To that point about communication, I feel like your job and your body work demonstrate, like, in Oppenheimer, you're responsible for creating a massive number of costumes and managing a team that it's a just massive volume of things to be responsible for. So, what approach do you take in communicating to the folks working underneath you to, hey guys, we gotta get this done, and this is how we're gonna do it? And
Well, it's really quite interesting because you have two brains. You really do work with two brains as a designer on a film. What you have to do, you are totally responsible for designing the costumes for the film, but you're also responsible for hiring the best team that you can, because sometimes you're really only as good as your team. And it's a really important element that you get right, because there's money involved, there's more work, and there's work, money, time, place, execution, and so on. So if everybody understands how you work or what the expectation is, and you communicate it, back to communication, you communicate really what the expectation is, not only verbally, but through imagery, through anything that you find is really the best way to communicate with your team of, this is what the picture is, this is what the whole idea is that we're looking for, this is the palette that we're looking for, etc. Then you hope that everybody gets it and you know who you're working with. And you can see pretty quickly if somebody doesn't get it. And then you try to make that adjustment. But it's a big responsibility on that side, because that side also is about the money. And the money is always part of the bigger picture.
and the time, which is money.
Money, time, and you never have enough time and you never have enough money. So it is 100% a necessity that every single person that you want to work with and you hire, and that they hire as well, because you'll have a costume supervisor who's in charge of all of that technical aspects and the money, is that you're all on the same team and you all get where you're going.
And so it feels like that process is when you're on set or even at a certain stage of pre-production, it becomes a very public process in terms of you're communicating to your team and you have the idea refined. But I'm interested in, how do you refine what does your research process look like when you sort of have to sort of address, text, other movies, newspaper, or just understanding, I guess, for a period piece? Can you
Okay,
walk me
so
through a bit?
I think that this is really clear for any piece, but for a period piece, what you're looking at is research. So what first and foremost always comes the text, what the text says. Then in the process of really defining what that time and place look like, in the case of Oppenheimer, it is about a person. In the case of Oppenheimer, there's a massive amount of research available to you. There is more imagery than you could ever imagine. So it's not hard. But because it's all black and white imagery, right, you're going to not make a black and white film. There's black and white within the film, but you're going to basically make a color film. So there is a need to define what the palette is. And one of the things that happened at the very beginning, I think it was like the first meeting that I had with Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas, and we were looking at all of these images of Oppenheimer. One thing became clear to me, looking at a full table's worth of images of Oppenheimer, and it didn't matter what period of time it was, is that he always looked the same. It didn't matter if it was the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, or even the 60s.
Which says so much about him.
Exactly. And so what shifted was clearly just the fabrication. Because you couldn't tell the color. It would be light, medium, or dark, right? And Chris, I made this comment, and he saw what I saw. And he said, well, then what color would his shirt be? Which is a really good question. And I very quickly said, well, it would be a many different shades of blue. We could take blue from light through medium till not a dark, dark blue, but there's probably about 6 colors of blue that I would use. He said, oh, okay. I had nothing to base that on. It was only instinct that it came. Knowing that it was Cillian Murphy that was going to be Oppenheimer. His eyes are the most sheer glass, gorgeous color blue you could ever imagine. And blue just made sense to me. White didn't make sense. Blue made sense. So that is all part of process. Okay. What's good about that process is that you're working with the director. So he's understanding what you're seeing and you're communicating what you're seeing and he's reacting to it. And then you can have a conversation that further elaborates other things. When it comes to regular, there's nothing that's regular in filmmaking, but when there's another kind of period piece, you just do the research. You get to know what it's about, whether you look at the imagery, whether you read books, whether you go to the museum, whether you look at paintings, whether you look at illustrations, whatever you can find, you are a detective. Basically, a costume designer is a bit of a detective. You have to do detective work. And you're a psychologist, and you're a mother, and you're a father, and you wear every single hat you could ever imagine through that first stage of the process, because all of what you have learned, you have to make tangible and workable for different artists. It's a very, very demanding job. It's very, very demanding because you'll never have enough time. But there is something about following your instinct, no matter what the genre is. And that's just by observing and observing culture, observing what were the bullet points of a particular period of time, or that period that you're creating for sci-fi, or name a genre. You just have to kind of extract what that essence is and then elaborate from that point going forward.
Understood. My last question is, what kind of advice would you have for aspiring costume designers? Not enough. Yeah. What advice do you have for aspiring costume designers?
You have to understand that you will have to work very hard. Being a costume designer can be hugely satisfying, gratifying, creative experience. You have to love collaboration because your dream of what you will create needs to be communicated with the director and all of the other departments so that you share the dream. You have to be able to really understand that you have to bring something to the table and really believe in it and have it be 100% what you really feel the film is, or the television show, or whatever you're going to make. The essence has to be at its core. Then it's your job to be able to create from that. But it is also your job to be able to communicate that with the director, the producer, the cinematographer, the production designer, and of course the actors and actresses. Make all of that very difficult. So if you dream of becoming a costume designer, you have to be prepared to work very diligently in satisfying all of those different areas to create one vision, because it is one vision that's going to go on the screen. And somebody will look at you and say, I don't like that. What else do you have? And you have to be able to think on your feet to be able to supply that answer. It's an exceptionally gratifying job, but it does take a lot of work and a lot of commitment and perseverance.
Do you have any feelings about, as a young person coming into the world and the film industry, just streaming this, streaming that, decline of theatrical attendance? Like, do you have any opinions on that and how audiences are perceiving cinema or just visual images differently with the decline of theater
I think
attendance?
it's exciting. I am one that thinks it's exciting. I am a hugely curious person. And I might add that a large curiosity to aspiring costume designers. You have to remain open and you have to remain curious about everything. That being said, I think that it's an exciting time now. Although I think that the scripts, pardon me, I'm just using this as a general word, are being rewritten. What they will become, I can't tell you. I'm excited to see. What I do hope for, more than anything, is that young talent that's coming up really pays attention to storytelling. Because at the end of the day, you could show me anything. It could look totally different. It doesn't matter what it is. But if there's a story attached to it that's a good story, I'm hooked. So it doesn't matter if I'm much older now. I'm still hooked on a good story. Everybody's hooked on a good story. So I just hope that that is what really can be refreshed and not rehatched. You know what I mean? I think that people are really fearsome about AI. What is that going to be? Is that going to eliminate something? Whatever. I think AI could be used as a very, very, very helpful tool. It's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the dark side of it, but I think that in a positive sense, I think that it's a very helpful tool. And it can be a helpful tool in this industry and be exciting to what lies ahead. Clearly, technology moves it right along. However, the one thing that we do fall back on is the human quality of storytelling. So it doesn't matter how fancy you get,
Right.
and how oh, this is like something cool and new, and that's all fine and good. But you still do fall back on humans, and people love other humans or hate them.
Right.
They could be the villain, they could be the good guy. It doesn't much matter. What do they fall back on is the story of people.
We're always going to be the cave people looking at the fire.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that that's really an important element to remember, however it begins to show up in the new world.
Well, thank you so much for your
You're
time.
very, very
It's
welcome.
been such a pleasure talking with you.
Pleasure talking to you as well.